we are like the definition of accidentally fell into this role. I mean, we had our own careers. Like,
we had no idea it would look like this today, but in some way, shape, or form, we knew that it was going to grow into something in terms of hospitality.
As we were going through this, like, hey, we should document it. It was literally just setting a tripod up, filming what we were doing, because we had no time. A lot of the renovation we were doing ourselves, just filming what we were doing the day, scraping it together into a video, hitting post on it.
That is Brett and Casey McManus, who have an amazing story of leaving their jobs as a teacher and a marketer to buy a small motel in Vermont. They have been sharing the story of them acquiring this motel and then doing a total renovation on it, sharing it on Instagram, and people have been going crazy. They love it. If you look at their account, I'll link in the show notes, but they have more than 300,000 followers as of now. If you look at the posts that they're making, hundreds of thousands of views. They had one video that went viral and reached more than 10 million people. So people are fascinated by this. And in this conversation, you're going to hear the story about how this all got started and what they've learned along the process. You're watching Hospitality Daily. I'm your host, Josiah McKenzie. Let's get into it. What attracted you to the world of hospitality and kind of made that a big focus for your lives right now?
So we are like the definition of accidentally fell into this role. I mean, it's not like I don't know that we're even like your stereotypical like hospitality mold. It's honestly like we had our own careers. Like both of us, I would say like, it started as like inklings in a younger age. Like we both worked in restaurants growing up, and I was like a ski instructor, and like different like roles that we were in were, you know, you kind of had to be like person-to-person interaction, you know, but we like went down our paths. I worked in corporate marketing for a long time and kind of went down the whole, you know, big glorious Fortune 500 thing that I thought was going to be my end-all be-all. And Casey was a teacher. She went to school to be a high school earth science teacher, and we, you know, really the way we went into it is actually real estate is where we started. So we had moved to Minnesota for work after we both graduated from college. And basically, instead of buying our first home, we bought a duplex, and we fixed it up during COVID, and we kind of lived in one side. And then we kept doing that a little bit. So like every year we'd buy our next duplex and buy the next duplex. And over the course of that time, realized that we loved real estate. But we absolutely hated being landlords. Like just like that landlord, like just like that normal bit. It just wasn't our thing. It was, but we really loved the real estate. And of course, around this time, and Airbnb was becoming a very popular thing in short-term rentals. So for us, it was like, hey, let's just give this a shot. And that's where we kind of like really like, I'd say that was like our first take on like true hospitality of what the businesses that we've, you know, begun to know it today. But kind of like an accidental, like, hey, let's just try this out. And then for us is a couple dynamic, and this is where, you know, pass it over to Casey a little bit too. We just kind of flourished a little bit where it's like neither one of us were like these, like, just like your typical hospitality mold. But for me, like I have a lot of background in analytics, in the software, and the operations flow of everything. But then for Casey, especially with her teacher background, and again, I don't want to talk for you too much, like with her mom being a home stager and kind of having an eye for the design, it was just this very natural fit where, again, like neither one of us saw it coming, but kind of like one of the first times in our life that we really had success with something, I guess you could call it. And, you know, that was really the kickoff of it.
Yeah, I think that's where we kind of found that little spark that ignited in us, was when we switched over to short-term rentals, a couple of those. And he kind of fell into that role where, you know, got operational stuff up and going. And I kind of started to dive into different little podcasts, educational podcasts on the Airbnb world when it was exploding, and just found, wow, I could really have an interest in this. And the two of us kind of fell into our little niches and took on roles. And that's where we saw that little bit of success and us working together really well as a team and as a couple. And that was big for us. And that's where that spark kind of started. And we knew in some way, shape, or form, we had no idea it would look like this today, but in some way, shape, or form, we knew that it was going to grow into something in terms of hospitality. And I think Brett kind of touched on it too, but just the background that I have in education and in teaching and working with people constantly really just drives my love for hospitality. You know, and that cliche, you know, providing an experience for someone, but it really truly is a love and desire for it.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you both touching on different elements of this, right? And for me, this is what is so compelling about hospitality. Because I think heading into this, I was curious, is this just a real estate play? Hospitality is the most interesting form of real estate? Or is there something about kind of the, the softer elements of hospitality and kind of the power that you saw there I guess I'm hearing from you both. It's a combination of the two.
Yeah, and probably each one of us leans one more way than the other, but like together, it's like I don't see us doing anything else at this point, just because and again, we each kind of have our own take at hospitality and can go into a little bit further from there. But you're spot on.
Amazing. So I guess staying at the high level for just a few more moments, I'd love to get your thoughts on what is the role of a hotel or motel in a community, right? We've talked about the why hospitality is compelling to you both, but what role do you feel like it plays in a community context?
Yeah, I mean, so for us, it's really the story of this property is a little bit of it is kind of a high level. And it, unfortunately for the property that we bought, it starts off as kind of a negative story of the negative impact a motel can have. So we're in Killington, Vermont. Ooh, we have a phone ringing. Sorry about that.
It's all
I'll
good.
start over really quick.
We'll edit it out. Yeah.
You could just send it, Case. I would just bring it over here. So if we like have to... We're live on the set here, running and gunning.
This is great.
So it's
This is great.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So yeah, I was just kind of curious about what you view as the power of not the power, but the place of a motel or hotel in a community.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, we are located in Killington, Vermont for a little bit of back, which is a small mountain ski town in central Vermont that, couple thousand residents, and basically the whole town revolves around this mountain. And a lot of the folks who live here either work in the restaurants or work in the motel, but really a close-knit community. And what we really saw here, we picked it up. Again, when we first came to the motel, it wasn't exactly like the gem of town. There was some Section 8 housing program stuff going on here. The owners had really let the property go, didn't have the best, we'll say, residents living in here full time. And what we really walked into is the negative aspects that it can have on a community of, not only a physical eyesore that everybody drives by every day and just kind of the way it can bring it down. But, the beauty of that is as we've now gone through and renovated this property and fixed it up, have really seen how it can be something that people are proud of. And I think it's one of the big reasons, we've had a lot of support through this project, through different contractors and people to be involved. And, so I guess to really answer your question more directly, the way we saw it play through is it really, the type of hospitality, the type of property, it attracts a clientele. And especially in a small town like Killington, that's the clientele that's eating in the restaurants and they're shopping in the stores and interacting with other people and the community members. And we've really noticed that, now that we're bringing just we'll say a quality level of clientele that's coming and excited to, be in this community, and the restaurants are feeling it. The shops, everybody else is as well. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to their case.
I think the most important part too, where I've kind of felt a difference, kind of coming from short-term rentals where you're in an individualized home, sometimes just Absolutely. In a neighborhood where you're operating on your own. The one of the biggest things that I've noticed being in the hotel motel industry, being a part of the community, is connecting with other businesses. And that has benefited us in so many ways. And then also in return, like Brent mentioned, connecting with other businesses, sending our guests to, hey, we had this great meal at the restaurant across the street. We highly recommend it. Go try it out, or guests coming back to us and telling us meals that they loved. And spreading that word of all the things that this community has to offer and really using that to, the whole community of sharing the goodness that everybody brings when they come in to, whether it's recreating at the ski mountain or, eating and drinking or going to little small craft shops and supporting local businesses, but putting people out there and directing them to those types of businesses helps connect the community and grow as a whole community together, which is just so awesome to see, the growth that is continuing to happen here in Killington as we could become a part of it.
That's amazing. Have you gotten to know some of those other small business owners through this process? I know you're early in the journey, but have you gotten to know them a little bit as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of the nice part about like how this has played out for us. So we just purchased this property in a few months ago. It'd be a February 2024. And so we kind of had to like run and gun for a little while, being in a ski town, that's like the craziest time of year. So it's like we closed on a Friday, drove 5 hours up here from Western New York. We were living before. We were sold out that night and had to like run. I literally just like figure it all out quick. But then soon after that, like as we got into late March and April, things started slowing down. And as the seasons turn over, we have a fortunately a lot of strong summer activity where we are as well. But we had that time where we were renovating and things are quiet around town, and you can go, sit at the restaurant across the street, and they have a really and one of the big things that, again, I would say we accidentally stumbled into, but that's been huge for us. I'd say if you're a hospitality operator anywhere, is getting involved with like the local business association. And fortunately for us, Killington has a really, really strong association of business owners where, it's kind of it's a touristy town here, but I'd say like it hasn't had the big private equity buyout yet. So a lot of like, you go in a lot of these restaurants and the owner's cooking in the back, and a lot of the other hotel owners still live here in town. So that's been a really, really cool way to get to know other people, who have been running business here for 20, 30 years. And, to be able to interact and learn from them, it's invaluable.
It sounds like that's just a fun part of being a business owner, but especially in the hospitality business, as you mentioned, your business and the other, restaurants and other businesses associated with travel attract people to the area, right? And so you touched on this a little bit. You kind of saw an opportunity for attracting a certain clientele. I wonder if you could describe that, because my understanding is that you were pretty specific in the sort of person that you were rebuilding and reimagining this place for. I wonder if you could describe that person, kind of how you thought about that as you've been going through this process.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to?
Yeah. I think it all kind of stemmed from us coming here as individuals. Before we bought the property, we came to the area a lot to enjoy what it had to offer in terms of the ski mountain and recreating and mountain biking. And we kind of saw this opportunity just kind of coming up here and driving by, imagining, hey, wouldn't that be cool to, own one of these little motels? And I think creating that space for the ideal person to come in and have a good, comfortable stay, but also enjoy the functionalities of being able to bring their bike into their room. And, they come in with their skis and their bikes, and it's difficult to leave a bike out on a vehicle and overnight, you want to bring that into a safe space with you that's secured. And so that was something that we valued when we designed the room. We really need to have a space where we're going to be able to fit, gear in the rooms for people to feel comfortable when they stay.
For sure. And I think there's like a huge benefit that we had too of, while we came in, one of the big advantages that we had, and one of the reasons that we picked this market is, as Casey mentioned, we were skiers and bikers. So we were like, hey, we have a lot to learn, but at least if we can get somewhere where we know that clientele, like it's one less, step in the battle that we have to march on. But the added benefit on top of that is we got to run it as is for a couple of months before we changed anything. So we got to interact a little bit with the guests that's staying there. And, one of the big things that we learned is there's a huge shortage of supply in this town. So it was kind of that sense of like anything we put out there was going to be successful. And there's a reason, so a lot of people just put out the highest caliber product possible, and the $400, the $500, the $600 night accommodation. It's what you see a lot of people doing. But because we had that opportunity to run it, we kind of got to meet our avatar that we talked about, which is like the two buddies from Boston. And there's these individuals that we had staying with us before, where it's, two friends coming up. They are here to ski, man. And they are going to roll in at 10 o'clock at night after work. They get up at 7 a.m. because they want to be the first ones up into the mountain. They're coming back, they're getting a meal, they're going back to bed, and they're doing it again tomorrow. And it was so great hosting these people where it's kind of like, hey, even though, there might be this upper echelon of like really high, like boutique motel that we could reach for, we just love this caliber of people that we got to interact with. So that really fueled our desire to like create a space that, don't get me wrong, is like, it's nice, it's clean, it's fresh, but you'll notice in some of our design elements where we went with like a lot of the wood tones and a lot of like really kind of like that bulletproof room of like being clean, comfortable, but strong, so they can bring their bike and bring their ski in. And that was just a very fun journey to go on.
And I think too, there's some genuineness. Like, we didn't want to come in here and be, pretend to be someone that we're not. So catering to people that we can relate to and really trying to fit that, that avatar that Brett had mentioned, that's something that we knew we could be successful in, as opposed to trying to create this, luxury boutique, which is really great in certain roles, but for us, that wasn't going to be the case.
Well, it's interesting because I spent most of my career in marketing, and Brett, you built a career in marketing, and oftentimes you kind of go through all these exercises for developing avatars or personas, and it feels a little bit theoretical. It feels like what you're building is around you both, and then it sounds like after you took over this place, you are starting to see people that kind of fit this profile. And so it feels very real and it feels very tangible as opposed to kind of a thought exercise. I am curious though,
sure.
after you take over, I mean, this is kind of pre-renovations as I understand it, kind of the first few months when you're running the place. What surprised you, either about the guests or just running a motel? I would be curious to hear both of your thoughts on that.
I think what surprised me the most was, again, my kind of focus is always on the person. I love just meeting the guests and getting to know them and know their story. And the biggest thing that surprised me was, like, we kind of came in with, and I think the more we get into this and the more guests we meet, it really opens up our perspective. It really opens up, the way we look at the way we're running our business. And the biggest thing that surprised me was the reason people were coming in or why they were coming to stay. We kind of came in as, oh, well, we're kind of gearing this towards mountain bikers and skiers. That's what we're going to get. And then we started getting other people who were, oh, I'm here to drop, my child is going to summer camp and I want to stay a night. Or I'm here visiting friends. Or I used to come here when I was 10 years old and now I'm returning. Getting to hear different stories and the reasons that they were coming that I never would have expected was just a really cool part of this experience.
Just a quick follow-up on that. I guess in terms of were the moments that you had to connect and have these conversations consistent? Like, was it the check-in or check-out, or was it somewhere else? Because I feel like these conversations are so important to not only understand your guests, but kind of shape how you are running the place. Was it all over the place, or did you find the best conversations were kind of happening at the same place at the same time?
It was kind of all over the place. I think when we first took over, we had a traditional check-in process. You come in, you get your key, and you go to your room, so that was kind of where the conversations were starting. A lot of the conversations too happened when we first took over the motel. We served a light breakfast, and so we would just kind of sit in the office, and guests would come down for coffee and pastries and bagels, and we'd just talk about exchanging stories and stuff like that. And so a lot of it happened at in the office where the breakfast was served. Now, since we've transitioned over to kind of a more technical side, and we get into that in a little bit, where it's a little bit more of a self check-in, those conversations are just kind of happening throughout the property. We're still doing work. We're running around when the guest is here, so they're getting in their car and they're driving to go do whatever they're doing for the day. And, it's just a quick, hey, how are ya? How's your stay going? And just making, like you said, it's a big part of the way that you run the business. So just saying, I'm Casey, I'm here on site. If there's anything you need, what are you got big plans for today? What are you doing that's exciting? And just kind of starting those conversations naturally and organically in the parking lot or, outside their room, things like that.
So I was going to ask you we'll probably get to the social media element of your story in a moment here, but I'm just curious because you have such a huge and engaged social media digital community, and I imagine there's so many DMs and digital interactions. If you compare that with these kind of in-person, casual, impromptu conversations, how would you describe the difference between them? Are they exactly the same? Are you kind of finding out different things in different formats?
I think the craziest, most wild thing for me to wrap my head around, which I still haven't, is we didn't intend to be social media. We just posted kind of as a document, like to document our journey and to have, a record of it kind of. And the reach that it has made, like the overseas, people from the UK are messaging, from Denmark and France. And that to me, there's definitely a difference in those person-to-person conversations. And that's something that I definitely, enjoy more as an in-person conversation.
Why is that?
I think just having that human connection of being in person, seeing their face, being able to react in real time. Like, someone says, oh, I went to Buttermilk Falls yesterday and it was so cool. And I get to, react and say, wow, that's awesome. You should go check out this. And whereas when you have that DM messaging, you can still have that same conversation, but there's a little bit of a delayed, maybe we don't see the message for a couple hours and now that person has kind of left the mindset of that conversation, things like that. So I just really value that face-to-face human connection and reaction. But the value that it's brought in reaching worldwide is just beyond what I could ever imagine. And
it's been cool, like when people come by, and because we're, now we're really getting to the point where we're getting, people who have followed along and they've been on that journey. And so Instagram has been our social channel of choice. And one of the tough parts about Instagram is you have to cut it into like one of these quick snip, 30-second action pack, clips. But then these people get to come and they get to see it in person, interactions, and whether it is a follower or just a regular guest. And what's really been cool is the people who have come and stayed. And I don't know if the algorithm works in this way, but there's something that's happening where people come stay here and a week later find the Instagram page and they're like, oh my goodness. But which way you go with it, that's the part that's cool. Is it's one thing for people, and we get these DMs and these messages all the time where it's like, oh, we feel like, we're so like invested is like the big thing that like everybody says. But then they come in person, we actually get to have a conversation with them and hear more about like their journey and what brings them here. We get to have a conversation like this where there's a little bit more context, like who we are and what we're doing. And not only does it's just a very cool experience where it's just like, it makes them walk away, or at least like what we've seen in our reviews or like what we've heard back, with just like it's a real thing here and like, that's going on, and they get to enjoy it and they get that extra context, and it's been a wild dynamic.
Okay, so this is an interesting piece, and I think we should talk a little bit about this. I'll include a link in the show notes to your Instagram account. It is investors with two N's. Very clever. Investors. Today you have more than 300,000 followers. If I'm scrolling through, hundreds of thousands of views per post. My understanding, I read a story that was written a little while ago and said you had more than 10 million views on one of your posts, went viral. So incredible reach. I think social media is interesting to me because at its best, the promise is that it connects us with each other. At its worst, it can be that it seems fake. When I'm going through and looking at the reels, looking at the photos, it feels very human, right? Because there's little clips of you both. There is, I feel very drawn into the story. Is how much of this has been intentional, or have you just been winging it since day one?
No, so I mean, I'll give you the rollout of this. So there was some intention, but not in the way that it panned out. So when we came in, when he bought this motel, I had a small little real estate page that I was running where it's always just kind of been documenting what we were doing, like 500 followers max. And when we came in, and I kind of stopped doing it for a while because it's like, it just like wasn't, social media wasn't my thing. But when we came into this property, we knew that we wanted to document something with it because we just felt like it was this very cool life thing for us. Then again, we were moving 5-6 hours away from home, and we had a lot of family and friends that were, again, had been around for the lead up of actually purchasing this property and wanted to stay up to date. But I had read this book, and again, it's a little bit of the marketing background. And I don't know, Josiah, are you familiar with the book Story Brand by chance?
Yeah. Great book.
So Story Brand was a big part of it. And I had read that book, like as we were going through this, like, hey, we should document it in person. And they talk about that idea of like the hero's journey, and that people get, very invested and, not just being like shown this thing, but coming along. So we had this intention of like, hey, we can bring our family, we can bring our friends along. Like it can be this very natural fit. And then even as we started making these videos, I mean, like, I don't know how I could like make it any more of like but it was literally just setting a tripod up, filming what we were doing, because we had no time. A lot of the renovation we were doing ourselves, just filming what we were doing today, scraping it together into a video, hitting post on it. And we did a couple of those, and we really just enjoyed making them. And, our friends, our family, and then it was about 4 or 5 videos in. We had that one video that Casey made talking about the renovation for the first time that popped and just went, to your point, basically shot right up to about 10 million views. And we just kept doing that same thing, mostly out of necessity of like, there was no time to like curate this like manicured video because we were just so in the trenches spinning this property around in a short period. But, we just kept getting that feedback from people that they liked it, that they enjoyed it. Again, we talked about it a couple of times. They felt very connected to the property. We kept it going. So some intention, but not not geared towards the reasons that it played out, but it's just been cool.
I'd love if we could just a quick follow up on that to your point. Maybe this is for you, Casey, but if you had to guess, how long did it take to create these? Because I'm trying to learn about this world, and I'm like, you can spend an insane amount of time doing this stuff. It sounds like it was pretty straightforward for you. So how would, if you had to guess, how long did it take to make this one that
to
went
make a
viral?
video?
To make one of these videos? 20
minutes.
30
Yeah.
Wow.
minutes.
We keep it very,
Yeah.
I'll let you go.
No, well, it's funny that you asked that question because I'm sitting reflecting, with the crazy time that we've had, we just finished renovations. We're just getting our feet back on the ground. So we haven't really had time to reflect back on the whole process very much, so I'm sitting here reflecting in my head as he's talking. And it's funny because we started creating these videos, like Brett said, just to kind of document. For the first 5 months of owning this property, I was driving back and forth every single week to New York, where we're from. So I was still teaching full time. I wanted to finish out my whole school year. So every single weekend, I was, Friday night driving down up to Vermont, and then Sunday night driving back to go teach. So we had a limited time frame. If that was that video that hit 10 million views, it was the first video I had ever voiced over. He was here, he was doing videos, just throwing them together in 20 minutes. And he's like, why don't you voice this one over? And looking back, it was,
one of the worst videos we've done.
It was not well read. It was, I just felt like it was very scripted, but for whatever reason, people just got interested in it, it just it's one of those things where it just shows up. And
yeah, but for us, it was literally just like, we'd film clips, because we're not the kind of people, like, you'll never see me around vlogging like too much with it. Like, we're just not that kind of personality. But it was great for us because hey, I gotta paint this entire wall. I'll just set up a tripod in the corner, paint it, and then at the end of the night, just use like CapCut or like a little app, slice them all together, do a quick voiceover of what happened for the day, add some captions, and on Instagram they've went. And to this day, it's the same process that we do. And, we've obviously, people start asking for stuff like YouTube and, more manufactured content like that. But, I think that's one of the things for us is, we still have a business to run too, and everything that we're doing here with that. And, for us, focusing on being hospitality operators first. I don't want to say like social media second, but it's kind of naturally how it's had to be. But I think it's a huge piece of not losing the thing that people seem to be gravitated towards. So we've tried not to break it too much.
Yeah, and I think what people like Brett mentioned, like, we're not doing glamorous things. We're painting, and half the time in the videos we're covered in paint and wearing paint clothes. Like, it's not glamorous. But what we found is, from feedback from people, what they love is seeing that transformation.
Mm-hmm.
They'll comment, "Oh, I wish this was an HGTV video or show, an HGTV show," because you get that satisfaction of the entertainment of seeing really cruddy room becoming this beautiful woodwork and all everything that goes into the remodeling, and that's, I think, what really pulled people in, and then getting into our story and our journey, kept them there.
Amazing. So I think you've shared a number of lessons just in our conversation so far, but I do want to kind of talk about kind of moving forward, but just to, kind of reflect back on the journey that you've had so far. Are there any other lessons that come to mind, things that maybe were surprising to you, or I guess what I'm hearing is kind of really this focus on sharing the journey. It's like, don't focus on it being perfect. You want to share that journey. You want to take people along with you as you go through that. I'm hearing a focus on, thinking about who are you serving, this avatar or this kind of typical guest that you're looking to serve. I'm hearing, really deeply connect into the community. I'm also, from what you've shared, just kind of looking at how you were all in on this. It wasn't like, I'm going to make an investment and someone else is going to run it. You move up there, right? You move up there. It sounds like you're front lines, providing hospitality. Does anything else come to mind in terms of kind of key lessons as you reflect back on the past months?
One of the big lessons that's like stood out for me coming through this is, especially, for us, and we talked about it earlier in the episode, is we're in a very specific region with a very specific customer base that's coming here for like skiers and snowboarders. And I think one of the things that's gotten very tough that like everybody talks about with social media, but like you really don't know it until it happens to you, is you have 300,000 people that are commenting their opinions of what they think about what you're doing. And whether you're in a restaurant or a hotel or anything in this world that you're starting and you're going to put it out there, I just think going into it, really having your values of what you're going to deliver cemented, and just having to understand, like, if you get somebody ripping you apart in the comments about it, it really just something to be mentally prepared for, about how much they hate the color green and they don't understand why you're not painting this room hot pink, and why would you make the headboards out of wood? Like, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen. Like, really just being cemented in, like, who are we delivering this product for, and who is that key avatar in mind? I think that was probably one of the more difficult things we both had to go through in this journey. But I mean, just like but now it's paying off, because not only are we still getting a lot of these people who are coming and staying, we've just had to learn that a lot of the people who are ripping you apart, like, they're never going to come anyways. But if you could just hold on to your belief, you know, it'll pay off. And now we're actually seeing that as we're opening the reviews. I'll kick it to you, but that was a big one for me.
Well, I think too, like, reflecting on our whole journey getting here and us two kind of falling into our roles, we kind of explained in the beginning, we weren't hospitality people. We weren't, you know, our families aren't in hospitality. We didn't really have anybody that we, you know, looked up to that was in the hospitality or ingrained in that, you know, business. So coming in, a lot of it was just, we're still learning. A lot of it's just learning on the fly and figuring out what works, what doesn't work, and trial and error. And one of the things that I have kind of realized throughout the whole process is, as I start to, like, solve different problems and we start to think about aspects of hospitality, how much I keep going back to the way that I ran my classroom and education. So, and what I mean by that is the practices that I use in my classroom translate so much to hospitality. And I never ever would have pieced these two things together if I never was in both of those fields. So anything from the guest experience, right? The way you approach a conversation with a guest, the way, you know, there's that saying in education, any teacher knows, a student that's in your classroom is not going to remember, you know, what they did. They're going to remember how you made them feel. And that's, you know, that translates directly to the way that we want to make our guests feel here. So as we've done things like making our business a little bit more automated, like changing to a self check-in, right? That's great. Some guests love that because they come in late at night. They can just go right into their room. But now we've lost that personal interaction at the check-in desk, right? So now I think, okay, well, how am I going to, you know, solve this? How am I going to get those personal interactions? So, you know, then I think, okay, what would I have done in my classroom? You know, I taught high school students. I had 60, 15-year-olds. You know, how do I connect with them? And so now what we've been doing is leaving, like, I'll write a little personal note and leave it in the room. And that just says, welcome to Après Inn. We're so excited to have you. Feel free to come stop in the office and say hello. You know, like, just something that makes them feel welcomed and invited and valued and heard. Like, come into the office. We still want to chat, you know, we still want to get to know you. We don't want to be totally hands off. So just integrating things like that practices that I've used in my classroom that then translate over. Even when we start thinking about the future, we're, you know, at a point where we think about continuing to grow, hiring on a team, right? So you have staffing. So, and it's funny, he said to me the other day something about hiring, and I said, well, I could never be a manager. I'm not a manager. I can't manage people. And he said, you ran a classroom with 60, you know, kids. You can manage, you know, and that's where it starts to come back again, where so many things like hiring on your staff, right? There's a lot of businesses out there right now who staffing is a big struggle, right? So when you get good staff, you want to hold on to them. So, you know, you're, as a leader, you are creating the climate and culture of your business. And just like you would in a classroom, making those staff feel valued and heard and invited and welcomed is a huge part of the way that we want to start to build a team. And those are just some of the examples that I've kind of come across that have really helped expand our capabilities within hospitality, but then also like my own confidence in being able to, you know, okay, building a team sounds really daunting, or really why am I blanking on the word? Like, building a team sounds really intimidating, right? Well, if I just break it down to what I know and what can I relate to and how I've dealt with the situation before, there's so many aspects you can translate.
Oh, I love that, and I think that's why it's exciting to talk with you both. And I love talking with people who are, built careers outside of hospitality, in a traditional sense, and are bringing those skill sets into hospitality because hospitality is fundamentally human. It's like, how do we engage with each other? And you both are bringing professional and just life experiences into the work that you're doing today, which is, I think, why people are so compelled by your story. And I think, that's when you share little clips of this, people are into it. They're not just like, oh, you're not going through the motions just because this is like what you should do in hospitality. You're like, no, this is what I see as the opportunity based on everything we've learned so far, right?
Absolutely.
I love it. I guess, yeah, I feel like we can't talk about social media without talking about manifesting some stuff. So I guess like I'd be curious for you whether it is, brand partnerships or just what you like in your business. You both have touched on elements of this, but I guess my question for you is, moving forward, kind of what are some of the things that you have in the works or, are coming shortly or things that you want to have happen? Because there's going to be a lot of people listening to this and if we can put some messages out there, I'd love, for folks that are listening in, love your story and would just love for you to share a little bit about kind of what's coming up or you hope's coming up.
Yeah, for us, I think it really, like, as we kind of look towards the future, there's two pieces to it. The first is maximizing what we have here and the experience we have here. And you touched on brand partnerships a little bit. And that's one that we've had to navigate through as well. When you start getting a following, you start getting people reaching out and, the money grab can be there sometimes where it doesn't make sense. But we've also, I think we've been fortunate where we've been able to bring into a couple of brands where it really makes sense. So, for things like bedding and flooring that we can bring in that we can talk about in the business, it's a very natural fit for us that guests can come and experience and enhance their experience. Another one that we're working on right now is a partnership with like a local craft brewery. A lot of people who ski and bike love craft beer, and now we have a lot of people from out of town that are coming in to stay with us that have never been to Vermont before. And one of the first questions we get is like, hey, where can I go to hang out and where could I go to get a beer? And there's some aspects like that where we can have like a partnership that we can bring in that it's just a very natural fit. So we're looking to maximize those where it's like, again, not to like crack a joke, but like, hey, we're not just doing an ad for like Surfshark or Athletic Greens or something like that, but like brand partnerships that we can bring together that can really kind of be that win-win-win where it gives, them obviously obvious audience growth, but then for us and then for our guests that are actually coming and staying, it's something that's easy for us to create content about, and then it's something that our guests can experience too and enhance the stay. Like those are things that we're really excited about. And then the second piece, Brett,
can I just ask a quick follow-up on that? Because I think the relationship with the brewery makes sense, and I think that could be very productive. But you're describing something I don't often see in hospitality, and that's like very tangible, specific. You mentioned flooring and bedding. So is there maybe an opportunity even to get into the not the infrastructure? Well, maybe it's the infrastructure, but that actually like physical elements of a room and kind of like put together things that help you and your business, but also are impacting guests.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the flooring is like, it's an obscure, but like such a good example of that because when we started making some videos talking about that, we were going to switch all of our, like it was carpet, old carpet, like a lot of these hotels and motels are, over to vinyl plank floor. We got ripped apart of like, it's going to scratch, it's going to leak, it's going to be horrible. Well, we were able to partner with Build Direct, which is a manufacturer of incredibly high quality flooring. And that was an opportunity where, without delving like too deep in the weeds, like for us, we were able to get product that in reality saved us money on our renovation. But then also, now we can, as we're doing, we can just make these little videos when we're cleaning a room, like, oh, room was destroyed this past weekend, like give it a quick mop. And it's like, it's very organic at us, but it kind of like, it just hits like what we need to hit about it in a very like fun and organic way. But the other thing that's so cool, like whether it's flooring, bedding, pillows, the actual mattresses themselves that we found is very unique for a property like this is it's not like we're just talking to people about it. Like if we were, I guess, any other kind of influencer where you're just kind of preaching to the world virtually, like people get to come here and actually experience it. And we have all these rooms that somebody can come in and we get that all the time, especially on the mattress front. That's, what bed is this? And it's just that extra layer where not only are we talking about it online, but people, whether they can come and experience it too. So it's created some really cool win-wins, again, with those right products where it's a win for the company because they get to not only have this virtual audience, but actually people interacting with it in person. For us, it's helped us a lot out in the actual upfit because we've had to bootstrap a lot of this ourselves. And then again, for guests, it just creates that kind of more premium experience, which has been really cool.
I appreciate you getting into this because if there's any marketers listening at any consumer focused brand, I feel like this is such a incredibly huge opportunity that I think some people are a little clued into, but it's still way it's flying under the radar. And it's
Sure.
exactly what you described in the sense that there are a few things as immersive as staying in a motel, right? And there are a few moments as powerful as a trip because you're stepping outside of your day to day. It is the perfect time to introduce someone to a new thing. I feel like it is such a goldmine of untapped opportunity. I don't know if you see it that way, but I feel like what you've described is just like the start.
Absolutely. And it's again, like we haven't solicited too much of it because for us it's finding those right fits, but it to your point exactly, I feel like the untapped these right fits exist that are perfect for each other, and then you can create these. I mean, we'll call them ads but it doesn't feel that way. And like we were just with friends the other day that like had no idea, like it's been layered in a couple of times, but they didn't know. And then which like how often do you see that anymore? So we agree completely.
That's amazing. It feels like there's so many exciting things, coming up for you. I guess kind of last question, kind of just, you talked a little bit about kind of like what you're working on now, but just kind of, I guess, longer term, any other kind of final closing thoughts in terms of kind of like what you're thinking about these days, excited about? I feel like you touched on a lot. So if there's nothing else you want to add, that's fine too. But I just want to kind of open-ended. Anything else that we didn't get to, but you're hoping to?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, for us, one of the things that gets really exciting, like this whole journey and this whole property for us is very, like, it's just been like a beautiful thing in our life that's happened. Because again, not, I guess bringing it back to the beginning, like we never expected any of this. Like 2 years ago, if you said that we were going to own a hotel in Killington, like, and it's just such a distant thing. But, what it's created for us, so this project that we could work on together, it's now a vehicle that's gotten both of us out of our careers that into something that we're very passionate about and enjoy and get a lot of fulfillment from. And the big thing for us is we just drive around and we see how many of these places are all over the country. And, for us, we're young, we're in our 20s. It's getting in and buying this. It's something that seemed like such a daunting piece, but when you work through it, the pathway is there. There was no, as nice as it would have made, there was no inheritance that funded this. A lot of this we had to figure out ourselves from the money standpoint. And it's very a process that could be replicated by other young people that are passionate to take on. So that's been something that's been very exciting for us in meeting with a lot of these owners and these sellers that are looking to retire and have really good properties that just like their kids or their family just don't have any interest in. So, for us, it's something that we're looking at as well, but that's something else that we're trying to talk a little bit about more like in our social channels is actually like the lifestyle of running these properties, because it really is like has become an amazing thing where it's a lot of work. The way that we've chosen to do it is a lot of work, being very hands-on, but now it's great and it's been fun. So, as we kind of think of the future, it's, could there be another opportunity like that for us? But really, trying to put the good word of motels out there because it's really a cool lifestyle that I think a lot of others can get into.
Yeah, for me, I think there's a moment that I think back to early on it was like Brett mentioned earlier. We came in and we ran the motel as is for a little while during ski season. And it was one of the first weekends I came up and I was in the office. We were having one of those conversations with the guests, at breakfast and just kind of chit chatting. And one of the guests asked, "Oh, so how long have you owned this property?" And my response was 2 weeks. And he nearly spit out his coffee. I mean, he's like, "What? You've only owned this for 2 weeks and you're running, So and I look back at that and think, we jumped into this with no, experience of being in a true hospitality. Like, running a short-term rental is very different than being in a hotel motel, So just thinking about where we've come from and where that we can get, where we've gotten to now, and now thinking about where we can get to and just expanding and growing and the opportunities that we can continue to expand it's really exciting.